For 2 years, Margaret had been losing her son one conversation at a time. It didn't happen with a dramatic argument. There was no slammed door, no screaming match, no moment when anyone could point and say, "That was when everything changed." It happened quietly. A missed Sunday dinner, a phone call that wasn't returned, a birthday message answered 3 days later, a family photograph Margaret wasn't invited into. Her son, Daniel, had once called her every evening. After he married Claire, those calls became weekly, then monthly, then almost never. At first, Margaret blamed herself. Maybe she had been too involved. Maybe she had said something wrong. Maybe Claire simply needed time to adjust to having a mother-in-law. So Margaret gave them space. Too much space. Because every time she tried to get closer, Claire seemed to find a reason to push her away. "She thinks I don't know how to raise my own children. She criticized our house. She said you spend too much money. She told Daniel that I was embarrassing her." Margaret heard those accusations slowly, one at a time. And because they came through Daniel, she believed there must be some truth behind them. The first time he confronted her, Margaret was stunned. "Mom, why do you keep criticizing Claire?" "I don't." "She says you do." "I only asked if she needed help." "She doesn't need you to fix everything." Margaret looked at her son. "I was trying to be helpful." "Well, stop." Those 2 words hurt more than he knew. "Okay," she whispered. After that, Margaret became careful. She stopped offering advice. Stopped asking questions. Stopped dropping by unexpectedly. She even stopped sending food unless Daniel specifically asked. Still, the distance grew. Then came Christmas. Margaret spent 3 hours cooking Daniel's favorite meal. She set the table for 4. She placed a gift beneath the tree for each family member. At 5:30, Daniel called. "Mom, we're not going to make it." Margaret looked at the untouched plates. "Is everything okay?" "Claire isn't feeling well." "Oh, I'll call tomorrow." "Of course." He hung up. 20 minutes later, Margaret received a text from Claire. "Please stop putting pressure on Daniel to visit. He has enough stress." Margaret stared at the message. She hadn't pressured him. She hadn't even called him. She sat alone at the table that night. For the first time, she wondered if her son truly believed the things Claire was saying. The answer came months later. Margaret had been hospitalized for a minor medical issue. Nothing dangerous. But Daniel didn't visit. When she was discharged, she called him. "I was worried about you," he said. "I know. Claire thought visiting might make you uncomfortable." Margaret frowned. "Why would it make me uncomfortable?" "I don't know, Mom." She wanted to ask another question. Instead, she said, "It's okay." That became her answer to everything. It's okay. Even when it wasn't. 2 years passed. Margaret watched her son's life from a distance. She saw photographs online. Daniel and Claire at restaurants. Daniel and Claire traveling. Daniel holding their daughter. They looked happy. Margaret tried to be happy for him. She truly did. But sometimes, late at night, she would look at an old photograph of Daniel as a little boy and remember the child who used to run into her arms. She missed him, more than she could explain. Then, one Saturday afternoon, something unexpected happened. Margaret was shopping at a small outdoor market when she heard laughter. A familiar laugh. She turned. Daniel was standing across the street. He was with several co-workers. And he was laughing. Not the polite laugh she had heard on their rare phone calls. Not the restrained laugh he used around Claire. This was the old Daniel. The boy who used to laugh so hard that he couldn't breathe. Margaret smiled. Then she noticed something. He looked genuinely happy. She watched from a distance. One of his co-workers said something. Daniel laughed again. Then another man asked, "Why don't you ever talk about your family?" Daniel's smile disappeared. "My wife doesn't like my mother." Margaret froze. The co-worker frowned. "Why?" Daniel looked uncomfortable. "She says Mom is controlling." Margaret's chest tightened. Then Daniel said something she never expected. "I don't actually know if that's true." The other man stared at him. "What do you mean?" Daniel sighed. "I haven't spoken to my mother properly in 2 years. "Why?" "Because Claire kept telling me things." Margaret stood completely still. Daniel continued. "At first, I believed her." "What changed?" Daniel looked down. "Last week, I found some old messages." Margaret's heart began pounding. "What messages?" "From Mom." His co-worker looked confused. "So, they weren't what Claire told me they were." Daniel swallowed. "She told me Mom had insulted her. But Mom's actual message was asking if she needed help." Silence. Daniel continued. "Claire told me Mom had demanded money." "She didn't." "No. She told me Mom criticized our marriage." "Did she?" Daniel shook his head. Mom actually congratulated us. Margaret felt tears forming. The co-worker asked, "Then why did your wife say those things?" Daniel didn't answer. "I don't know. But he did know something. He knew he had spent 2 years believing someone else's version of his mother." Then Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His face changed. "It's Mom." Margaret's heart stopped. She hadn't called him. Daniel answered. "Hello." Margaret heard his voice from across the street. "Hi, Mom." Her eyes filled with tears. "Where are you?" He looked around. Then he saw her. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then Daniel whispered, "I see you." Margaret smiled through tears. "Hi, sweetheart." He crossed the street. And for the first time in 2 years, her son walked toward her instead of away. When he reached her, he didn't say anything. He simply hugged her. Margaret held him tightly. Then Daniel whispered, "I'm sorry." She closed her eyes. "You're here now." "No, Mom. I should have been here before." She pulled back. "Why did you believe her?" He looked ashamed. "Because I trusted my wife." Margaret nodded. "I understand. But I should have trusted you too." She touched his cheek. "I never wanted you to choose between us." "I know. I only wanted my son." Daniel began crying. "So did I." And for the first time in 2 years, Margaret heard her son's laughter again. But this time, it wasn't because someone had told him a joke. It was because he finally felt free. The hug lasted longer than either of them expected. Margaret had imagined this moment hundreds of times. Sometimes she imagined Daniel calling her. Sometimes she imagined him showing up at her door. Sometimes she imagined herself finally telling him everything she had been holding inside. But now that he was standing in front of her, all the speeches disappeared. She only had one thought. "My son is here." Daniel wiped his eyes. "Can we sit somewhere?" Margaret nodded. They walked to a small cafe nearby. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Daniel kept staring at his hands. Finally, he said, "I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth." He looked up. "I believe things about you that I never verified." Margaret remained silent. "Claire told me you hated her." "I never hated her." "She said you criticized everything she did." "I asked questions." "She said you were trying to control our marriage." Margaret took a slow breath. "Did I ever tell you to leave her?" "No." "Did I ever tell you she wasn't good enough for you?" "No." "Then why did you believe it?" Daniel looked down. "Because every time I asked her, she had an explanation." He swallowed. "And every time I called you, you were careful. I didn't want to make things worse." "I know." He pulled his phone from his pocket. "I found something." He opened a folder. Screenshots. Messages. Old conversations. Margaret recognized some immediately. They were messages she had sent Claire. "Let me know if you need anything for the baby. Daniel mentioned you're tired. Please take care of yourself. I don't want to interfere. Just know I'm here." Margaret stared at them. "What happened to these?" Claire showed me different screenshots. "What?" She cropped the messages. Margaret's heart sank. She removed the parts that made them look harmless. Daniel nodded. "I didn't know." He opened another conversation. Claire had told him Margaret demanded that Daniel pay her bills. But the actual message said, "Don't worry about helping me financially. I can manage. Save your money for the baby." Margaret covered her mouth. Daniel whispered, "She made me think you were using me. I never wanted your money." "I know." He scrolled again. "She even told me you were angry when I bought our house." Margaret gave a sad smile. "I sent you flowers." "I know." He looked at her. "I found the receipt." Margaret laughed softly. "I remember." Daniel smiled. For a moment, they were silent. Then he said, "Mom, why didn't you fight harder?" The question hurt. "I thought fighting would make you hate me. You let me go. I thought if I gave you space, you'd eventually come back. I should have. You were married. I didn't want to become the mother who interfered." Daniel looked away. "I needed you." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I needed you too." They sat there for a long time. Then Daniel's expression became serious. "There is something else." "What?" "Claire knows I've been looking through the messages." Margaret's stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "She told me you're manipulating me." Margaret sighed. "Of course. She said you're trying to destroy our marriage." "Daniel, I don't want your marriage destroyed." "I know. Whatever happens between you two, don't make your decisions because of me." He looked at her. "Then what should I do?" "Find the truth." He nodded. "I intend to." That evening, Daniel went home. Claire was waiting. She immediately noticed his expression. "Where were you?" "With Mom." Claire froze. "You what?" "I saw her." "You went to her?" "Yes." "After everything I've told you?" Daniel looked at her. "That's the problem." "What?" I don't know what you've told me is true anymore. Claire's face hardened. She manipulated you. No. She has always wanted you back. She is my mother. And I'm your wife. I know. Then choose me. Daniel shook his head. That's not how this works. Claire stared at him. What do you mean? I shouldn't have to choose. Silence filled the room. Daniel placed his phone on the table. I want you to explain these. Claire looked at the screenshots. Her face went pale. Where did you get those? From my old phone backup. You shouldn't have been looking through that. Why? Because they're private. They're messages between you and me. Yes. And you altered them. Claire said nothing. Why? I didn't. Daniel showed her the originals. Then explain this. She couldn't. You told me Mom demanded money. I misunderstood her. You told me she insulted you. She did. Show me. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She made me feel unwanted. That isn't the same as insulting you. You weren't there. I was her son. You always choose her. Daniel shook his head. No. He looked at her sadly. I chose you for 2 years. Claire's expression changed. I gave up my relationship with my mother because I believed you. I was protecting our marriage. No. He pointed at the phone. You were controlling what I believed about my family. Claire began crying. You don't understand how afraid I was. Afraid of what? That she'd take you away. Daniel's voice softened. She never tried. I thought she would. So you destroyed the relationship before she could? Claire didn't answer. Daniel sat down. For the first time, Claire looked genuinely frightened. Are you leaving me? I don't know. That answer was worse than anger, because it meant the decision was no longer in her hands. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began rebuilding his relationship with Margaret. He visited her every Sunday. At first, the conversations were awkward. Then they became easier. They cooked together. They looked through old photographs. They talked about things